Third episode begins as Kyle and Cruz interrogate Alexandre. Kyle knew she was highly trained and unlikely to break under normal pressure, so he decided to push her by threatening the people closest to her. He sent Cody J. and Grady from the Special Forces to locate Alexandre's mother, Olga Balakin, and her sister in Kiev, hoping the possibility of their capture would force her to reveal the truth. However, Alexandre refused to change her story. She insisted that she never revealed anything about Joe, her mission, or the CIA operation. She explained that she had spent her entire life fighting against Russia and had no reason to help the country she hated. Her father died fighting against Russian aggression, while her brothers were still involved in the fight against them. For her, betraying the people trying to weaken Russia from within made no sense. Alexandre explained that she gave up Yermov because she wanted to damage Russia's operations from inside its own system. Her goal was to weaken the enemy, not help them. She argued that if the Russians somehow discovered Joe's identity, there were other possible explanations. They might have obtained her image from surveillance systems, satellites, drones, or tracked her movements during her travel. Kyle eventually became convinced that Alexandre was telling the truth. Her anger, emotional reaction, and consistent answers made him believe she had nothing to do with the attack. He ordered Cody and Grady to stop targeting her family and return. Meanwhile, the CIA decided that Alexandre's capture had to remain secret. She still had a tracking device connected to her, and Byron wanted the Russians to believe she was still operating normally. Once fully trusted, she could return to her position as a double agent and provide intelligence about the people working against America. At the same time, Joe faced pressure from her own family. While staying at the Camp Peary safe house, Joe prepared to leave for work when her daughter Kate called a family meeting. Kate begged her mother to quit her job, believing that if Joe walked away from the CIA, the people hunting her would stop targeting their family. Joe understood why her daughter was afraid, but she explained that abandoning her mission would not make their enemies disappear. Although Neil was not happy with her decision, he understood that Joe's dedication was part of who she was. Before leaving, Joe quietly placed a gun in his bag for protection and ordered her security team to stay close to her daughters, personally escorting them to school and bringing them home. However, while Randy and 2 Cups were transporting Joe's daughters, an unexpected accident on the road caught their attention. The situation felt suspicious, forcing them to break away from traffic and quickly move to safety. Back at CIA headquarters, Joe, Kyle, and Cruz met with Caitlin and Byron to discuss what they had learned from Alexandre. Kyle explained that after questioning her, he no longer believed she was responsible for exposing Joe. Instead, he believed the Russians probably discovered information about Yurimov's disappearance after the operation was already completed. Kyle suggested that Russia may have detected something unusual when Yurimov's tracking device was removed. After the bombing of the area, they may not have known exactly what happened to him. They only knew that their important agent had disappeared, leading them to investigate every possible connection. Because Joe returned home around the same time Russia began searching for Yurimov, she became one of the people they investigated. The arrival of the 2 Russian agents at her home was likely not a direct strike, but an attempt to gather information. However, when Joe killed them, she unknowingly confirmed that she was connected to the operation. Caitlin remained suspicious of Alexandre. She believed that the timing was too perfect to ignore. In her view, coincidences could sometimes reveal guilt, and she still struggled to understand why Alexandre would willingly give up such valuable intelligence about Yurimov if she had no hidden agenda. Instead of continuing to pressure Alexandre for answers, Byron decided to use her position to their advantage. He understood that experienced spies were difficult to break, but they could still be useful. Later, Joe, Kyle, and Cruz met Alexandre at an abandoned office building in Baltimore to hear more about what she knew. Once again, Alexandre insisted that she had not exposed Joe or the operation. She explained that the Russians still did not know the Americans were responsible for taking Yurimov. They believed Ukraine might have played a role, meaning they were still searching for answers. Alexandre revealed that this confusion could be used against them. Before bringing Alexandre into a larger intelligence meeting, the episode showed a conversation between Caitlin and her husband Errol, who explained the larger strategy being used by America's enemies. Errol explained that Russia had been using honey traps to target important people inside America. They would recruit individuals who could gain the trust of politicians, officials, and influential figures. These agents would build relationships, collect secrets, and eventually use information as leverage to force people into cooperation. The method was similar to the CIA's Lioness program in some ways, but the purpose was completely different. The CIA trained Lionesses to infiltrate enemy organizations and eliminate threats, while Russian operatives used personal relationships to manipulate people and create long-term damage from within. Alexandre explained that Russia and China already knew about the Lioness program, but they did not consider it a major threat because the CIA had mostly used it against enemies in the Middle East. This was the first time Joe's team was dealing directly with a much larger opponent that was targeting America itself. She compared the situation by saying Russia was like a wolf pack, China was like a tiger, and America was the bear. The wolf and tiger could not defeat the bear through direct confrontation, so instead they were trying to weaken it by spreading a disease from inside. Alexandre then provided the CIA with a list of American citizens who had potentially been compromised by Russian operations. The list included both low-level targets and powerful figures. Joe planned to hand the smaller cases to the FBI while the CIA focused on the bigger targets, including politicians and government officials. However, Joe soon discovered that Alexandre was still technically connected to the Russian SVR. Byron had intentionally kept her in that position because he wanted to use her access to gather as much intelligence as possible. Joe immediately became uncomfortable with the decision. She believed keeping Alexandre connected to Russia created a dangerous situation. If Alexandre decided to betray them, the CIA might not realize it until the damage was already done. Cal also confirmed that Alexandre's information included 5 American senators who were allegedly under Russian influence. The possible exposure of these politicians could create a massive political crisis. The CIA had to be careful because revealing the information too quickly could damage public trust in the government and create chaos. Joe decided that instead of immediately exposing the compromised officials, they needed a way to force the enemy to reveal themselves. She created a plan designed to make Russian operatives panic and come out of hiding. The CIA would announce that they had captured one of Russia's agents operating inside America. However, they would not reveal the person's identity or release evidence. Instead, they would allow the Russians to believe that one of their assets had been discovered. The fear of losing an important operative would force them to act. Joe's plan was to capture the Russian agent connected to the senator shown in the evidence. Once the Russians believed that agent was exposed, they would begin moving to protect their network. Those movements would allow the CIA to identify more spies operating inside the country. Byron compared the strategy to setting a barn on fire to catch the mice hiding inside. Alexandre would become the bait, and every Russian contact connected to her would be forced into the open. However, Joe remained convinced that Alexandre was hiding something. She believed Alexandre knew more about the Russian agents who appeared at her home and was either directly involved or protecting someone else. Because of that suspicion, Joe supported using Alexandre as part of the operation, even if it meant putting her at risk. The episode then returned to the present timeline, revealing the reason the Russians had captured Joe. She was being held in a dark, abandoned facility that appeared similar to an old mental hospital. Her arms, legs, and head were restrained to a bed, while a small device above her constantly dripped water onto her face.